Whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur, equity crowdfunding has really been booming so far in 2020. Today, we're going to update you on how all the funding portals have changed from 2019 to 2020 and go over the top 10 funding portals. We're going to be going over key stats that investors and entrepreneurs need to be looking for. Let's get into it. All right, so as you can see here, we're looking at some data from nextpitch.tv. Anyone can access this if you go to the website, and there's a button below the intro video that will let you see basically the latest funding portal data. Now, you will see there's a couple things to just be aware of in the data. Let me just close this. So first off, not all of the data is going to be available for every single platform. So some of them, the fuelers, which is the number of backers or investors, may not be there. But for the most part, this data is very accurate. You can look at it from, 2019, 2020, any of the years. The only other thing to be aware of is that, as you'll see here, this is showing, for example, WeFunder's done 30 million this year, Start Engine's done 27 million. If you go and look at the numbers, these will vary a little bit between company to company and who's reporting on it. The reason for that is it's whether you're measuring the campaigns that closed in a given month in a given year, or how much the campaigns raised in that month, and maybe the campaign didn't close till a few months later. So in this case, this is just looking at closures. So, because of that, if you actually go to 2019, Start Engine and WeFunder will flip, and Start Engine may say they're the number one portal, WeFunder may say they're the number one portal. They're both very close, and it's really kind of how you cut the numbers. As you can see, WeFunder's raised $30 million so far. They're still number one in terms of overall capital raised, but Start Engine is very close on their heels at $27 million raised so far in 2020. The other thing to be aware of, this is only Reg CF, so Reg A or Reg A Plus is, some of those campaigns that will raise up to 25 to 50 million. Start Engine has had a lot of big ones. WeFunder also has a lot of Reg D. So you just got to take all that into account when you see these numbers that the portals or the platforms are quoting. But when you look at it, right, the top kind of three portals up there are the only ones that are 20 million and above for 2020, which is a lot. That's a big increase over 2019. Now, there's a lot of reasons that are driving this. Obviously, COVID-19 being one of those, when everyone kind of put a freeze on their capital in terms of, venture capital, or they really started tightening the belt earlier this year. Some companies that maybe wouldn't have considered crowdfunding originally are now looking at it and turning to it as an option for raising capital. So because of that, every portal across the board has been posting record numbers, saying basically that they're seeing record growth. So that's a good thing. Both whether you're an investor, you're going to get more opportunities, or as an entrepreneur, that means that more people are going onto these portals and becoming issuers. Those people bring their audience of investors with them, who are perhaps a lot of first-time investors, so that they're really growing the overall investor base, so that there's more potential eyeballs looking to invest in your campaigns. Other than that, basically you can see the top 10 breakdown here. I'm not going to dive too much into it. We're going to take a look at a couple other charts and just cross-reference this, but it gives you an idea of the lay of the land. Now, this being said, I highly recommend everyone still checks out, if you're an issuer looking to look at raising capital, go to FINRA for the funding portals they regulate. Now, this page will show you all the funding portals that are active today. I think there's over 55 funding portals as of 2020, but they're still growing because there are proposed SEC changes that would increase the cap for Reg CF from 1 to 5 million. A lot of people think that could be, basically a big influx in the industry, bring more companies, bring more investors. Because of that, we're seeing a lot more portals starting to pop up as well. But in terms of the picture of 2020, if we go back here, the only real new one that you kind of notice on this list is Equifund. So Equifund crowdfunding portal is basically just launched in the last year. They've only had 3 campaigns, but very good, overall kind of around the 300 to 500K raised among those 3 campaigns, I believe. They do a really good job of, due diligence. It's kind of a portal that looks to screen, do more due diligence. They don't offer safes, but for now, understand kind of, that they're like one of the new people on the scene. Other than that, it's a lot of the same names that we saw in 2019. But again, you'll notice that distribution is huge. With those top 3 portals, even Seed Invest is, starting to kind of lose ground to those top 3. So if we look at the breakdown, right, WeFunder is still number one. And again, this is a little bit how you slice the numbers. Either Start Engine or WeFunder are kind of in that top slot. Start Engine obviously has a lot going on in terms of their marketing push. They're doing their own Reg A Plus campaigns. They're getting a lot of investors who are their customers to invest. They also brought on Kevin O'Leary in 2020, which I think has really helped kind of boost the engagement and boost the amount of publicity that they're getting. Republic, also another big one up there. I'm really excited about the future potential of Republic still. They did their note offering this year, which was basically for accredited investors only, but non-accredited investors could make a reservation in the Reg A campaign. They're hoping to launch that later this year, but they sold out. Originally they were offering 8 million notes. They ended up selling 16 million. They sold all the note reservations that they had. So that's very exciting. That's going to be a profit sharing note. So it basically lets the investors invest in Republic as a company. Full disclosure, I did invest in the Republic note as well. But then you can see the breakdown of all the other portals that are here. One interesting thing too, when you look at the average check size of these platforms, so you'll notice that the number of investors and the amount that's been invested will affect basically the average check size, right? So what this kind of shows you sort of jives with what I would feel intuitively. Republic is, more of a $250 or smaller check size. They're getting a lot of those smaller investors, even for $100 each, into a lot of these campaigns. So their campaigns have many more investors in them. Whereas WeFunder is almost, a $675 check size. So they're getting a lot more larger checks. They do a lot of more kind of the side-by-sides as well with Reg D. So you'll see them raising a lot more from fewer investors. Start Engine kind of in the middle of the road, a $500 check size, and you can see some of the others here. Net Capital and Seed Invest, they didn't have data for the number of investors, so we weren't able to calculate that. But overall, you can kind of see where all this data is. Now, as a general industry, whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur, equity crowdfunding and Reg crowdfunding, Reg CF, has been very exciting in 2020 so far. There's been huge growth since 2019 and even huge quarter-over-quarter growth. Again, a lot probably due to COVID-19, but also SEC regulations. There have been proposed changes that would open it up and make it a little bit easier to be able to raise more capital, and also opening up the types of investors. So recently the SEC announced that they were revising the accredited investor definitions. That's going to let more people qualify and hopefully kind of leaves it open to even have more people qualify in the future. Now, if you check this against some other data sources, this jives pretty well. So this is Crowdfund Capital Advisors and a report page that they do. And as you can see, this is basically total raise, but WeFunder, Start Engine, Seed Invest, Republic rounding out the top four. So you can see that Seed Invest was really stronger kind of the first few years of Reg CF, and they've started kind of lagging a little bit behind because Republic is that number 3 slot now as of 2020. But then there's Micro Ventures, Next Seed, Net Capital, and everyone else kind of rounding it out. Basically the trends, it is trending in terms of the amount of capital that's raised. There's been nearly $400 million raised since inception, which was 2016 for Reg CF, and you can see over 500,000 backers. So the industry is getting a lot of acceleration from a couple of these different trends. I think it's going to be very exciting to see where we end up. If you look at some other trends, this is a Google Trends chart. Kind of interesting just to see that, this is the 1-year chart. There's been a little bit of acceleration of the number of search terms, but especially recently, just since August, Start Engine's been taking off a lot. Whether that's due to, some of more of the public outreach and the marketing, whether it's the Reg A campaign or Kevin O'Leary, who knows, but they're doing a lot in terms of marketing and outreach. But even the other ones, the blue line here being WeFunder, they're seeing a little bit of an uptrend over the past 12 months as well. There are a few other key changes that have changed since 2019 going into 2020 that both investors and entrepreneurs need to be aware of. First, on WeFunder. WeFunder has introduced a lead investor structure. Now this is a fix to the cap table issue because previously, when you invested on WeFunder, each investor would be an individual line item on that cap table. They're able to get around this, as a few other portals already actually do today, by having a lead investor. This is someone who would be in charge of the overall crowd's voice, of their votes, and other things like that. Because of that, investors will pay 10% to this lead investor of any profits, so you need to be aware of that and vet this lead investor. In addition, there's a different structure in terms of how it's set up with the XX fund at WeFunder, so issuers or the entrepreneurs need to be aware of how that's set up. Another big change for 2020 is Start Engine is getting close to launching their Start Engine secondary platform. This allows increased liquidity basically by allowing investors to buy and sell shares of these private companies to other investors before they get acquired, before they IPO, that type of thing. Also, there have been a lot of fee changes in 2020. Early in 2020, Micro Ventures was offering no fees, but they've since gone back and charged fees. Earlier in 2019, Start Engine wasn't charging any fees to investors, but now they are charging fees. So to be able to get all these differences and more, head over to crowdwise.org/portals and download a free comparison guide for the top 10 funding portals. Whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur, you'll be able to download this guide, and it will show you all these key areas in terms of fees, number of investors, capital raised, and more. So that pretty much wraps up this review for the top 10 funding portals. But again, don't just limit yourself to these top 10 either. Take a look at some of those other portals, because if you're investing in a certain niche, maybe cannabis or, green tech or anything like that, there may be smaller funding portals that also kind of serve that niche very well. So that's why you want to be aware of what the different options are for where you invest, or if you're an entrepreneur, where you're raising capital. All right, that's it. This is going to wrap up this review. Thanks again, and we'll see you back here for the next time.